I never thought I'd be the kind of person to suspect my spouse. After all, Laura and I had been together for almost a decade, and I prided myself on the trust that we'd built. We had shared mornings over coffee, late night conversations, and all the little things that made our relationship feel solid, unshakable, at least. That's what I thought. But one day, something changed, and I felt it in the pit of my stomach. You know the feeling. The one that nags at you when something's off, but you can't quite place it. It started subtly. Laura's voice, usually sharp and quick with me, had become softer, almost like she was trying to avoid saying something. She'd tell me, "I'm just going out for lunch with a friend," but there was this weird edge to her words. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. The kind of change that makes you pause. I began to notice it more often. The late lunches, the excuses to be away. For a while, I brushed it off. We were busy. Life was demanding. And who didn't need a break now and then? But then, there was a text one night. It was from a number I didn't recognize. And though I tried not to, I read it. It was casual at first. Just about a day they'd spent together. But the message ended with, "I can't stop thinking about today." My heart sank. When I confronted Laura, she laughed nervously, telling me it was just a harmless group chat. I wanted to believe her. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. But that night, as I lay in bed beside her, the uneasy feeling only grew stronger. The truth, though, didn't hit me all at once. It was a slow burn. Over weeks, I began noticing more signs, her absences, the tension that built up. When I asked simple questions, I found myself wondering, was this really all in my head? Or was she hiding something from me? Finally, I reached a breaking point. One afternoon, when Laura left her phone unattended, I made a choice I never thought I would. I looked through her messages. I had to know. What I found shattered me. It wasn't just flirtation or a harmless crush. The messages were explicit. They were between Laura and a man named Eric, a colleague of hers. Their exchanges weren't just about physical attraction. There was an emotional intimacy that mirrored what we used to share. I felt sick to my stomach as I read each word. This wasn't just an affair. It was something deeper, something more devastating. For a week, I sat with this knowledge, unsure of what to do next. Confronting her immediately seemed pointless. I didn't want to make rash decisions. I wanted to think, plan. So I did the unthinkable. I started plotting. I wasn't going to confront her without being sure of every detail. The thought of the two of them together made my blood boil. But I had to be smart about it. I wasn't just going to accuse her of something without proof. No, I needed undeniable evidence, and I was willing to go to any length to get it. I started digging. At first, it was just curiosity, but soon it became obsession. I went through her social media, piecing together fragments of information. I found Eric's profile, then his wife's. Christina. She seemed like a kind woman, a mother to two young children. My heart broke for her, but I couldn't afford to let sympathy cloud my judgment. I hired a private investigator. Frank was a man in his 50s, grizzled. With a no-nonsense attitude, he took his job seriously and gave me the cold, hard facts I was looking for. Over the next few days, he sent me pictures of Laura and Eric together, leaving hotels, laughing and kissing. The betrayal was as clear as day, but there was more. Frank's investigation revealed that Eric was married to, he had a family, just like me. He had a wife who loved him, just like I thought I was loved. With this new information, I did something that felt strangely empowering. I reached out to Christine. I was honest with her, perhaps more honest than I had been with anyone in a long time. My message was simple, but it carried the weight of everything I discovered. "Hi, Christine. This is going to be hard to hear, but I believe Your husband Eric is having an affair with my wife Laura. I've attached photos. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this. Her response came in an hour. One sentence. Thank you for telling me. It was out there now. The truth was no longer just mine to carry. Christine knew. Eric knew. Laura had no idea what was coming for her. But I wasn't done yet. I still had a plan to set into motion. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to see the damage she had caused, to understand the full consequences of her actions. I wanted her to know that this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her, about Eric, about everything she had destroyed. So I invited her to lunch. A simple, innocent date. Just the two of us, I said. She seemed relieved. Maybe she thought my sudden attentiveness meant I didn't know, that everything was fine again. But it wasn't fine. Not by a long shot. It was the calm before the storm. The lunch was set. The day came, and I prepared everything carefully. The table was set for two, with our finest silverware and 2 glasses of wine. But there was no romance in the air, no rekindling of love. Oh, the real centerpiece wasn't flowers. It was the manila envelope filled with the undeniable proof of her betrayal. The moment Laura walked through the door, I could see it in her face. She was happy, almost glowing. Her cheeks flushed from whatever lunch she'd just had. She smiled, the kind of smile that you give when everything seems right with the world. When you've successfully deceived someone into thinking that you're still the person they thought you were. She stopped at the door and froze. Her eyes darted across the room from the table to me, and then to the envelope in front of me. The shift in her expression was instantaneous. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, as if she knew exactly what was coming, but still tried to act unaware. I didn't answer right away. I just gestured for her to sit down. "Sit," I said, my tone calm, but with an edge that made it clear this wasn't just a friendly lunch. Reluctantly, she sat. Her posture was stiff, her smile fading into something more nervous. The confidence she'd walked in with was now replaced with uncertainty. The kind of uncertainty that comes when you know you're about to face the truth, but don't know how to deal with it. I slid the envelope across the table, my eyes locking with hers as I did. "Open it," I said simply. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers trembling. As she reached for the envelope, I could see her mind racing, no doubt trying to come up with some explanation, some excuse to get herself out of this mess. But deep down, I knew she knew there was no escaping now. She opened it, and I watched as her face went through several stages. Shock, disbelief, and then the crushing realization. The photos, the text messages, the proof that her affair with Eric had been far more than just a fling, far more than just lunch dates. The emotional connection in the messages was undeniable. It was as if I could hear her thoughts racing through her head. How long had I known? Had I figured it out before this? Did I know everything? Finally, she spoke. "I can explain," she stammered. I leaned back in my chair, my voice now sharp as a blade. "Explain what?" "Laura, explain that you've been lying to me for months. Explain that you've been sneaking around with a married man behind my back. Explain that you've been treating our marriage like it was nothing." Her eyes welled up with tears. "It's not like that," she whispered. I stood up, the anger bubbling up inside me like a slow-boiling pot. "Then what is it like, Laura?" I demanded, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been having your cake and eating it too. She broke down in front of me, sobbing uncontrollably, the tears spilling from her eyes like rivers. She mumbled apologies, but they were meaningless. The words didn't matter more. I had nothing left to say to her. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had given my heart to, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. But I wasn't done. Not yet. "I've spoken to Christine," I said, watching her face turn pale as the words sank in. "You what?" she gasped. her voice breaking. She knows everything. I said, just like I do, you've destroyed not one, but two families. Laura, congratulations. Her face contorted in horror as the truth hit her like a freight train. There was no turning back now. The consequences of her actions were being laid bare in front of her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. There was a knock at the door, and Laura's head whipped around. Fear flooded her face, as if she was afraid of what? No, who was waiting on the other side. I stood up slowly and walked over to the door. I opened it, and there stood Christine. Her face was calm, but her eyes were blazing with a fury I'd never seen before, and behind her stood Eric, looking like the guilty, pathetic man he was. Laura's face went pale, and for a moment I saw the panic in her eyes. She tried to say something, but the words caught in her throat. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is closure." Christine stepped into the room. Her presence powerful. She was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes that sent a chill through the room. Eric followed behind her, looking like a man about to face the firing squad. He couldn't even meet anyone's gaze, especially not Christine's. Laura tried to intervene, to say something, but Christine snapped. "Satya, that's an lad. Don't you dare try to justify this," she spat, her voice low but laced with fury. "You're selfish. You're deceitful. You've destroyed everything. Just like him." Eric stammered, his usual arrogance completely gone. "Christine." I was feeling unappreciated at home. "You don't understand." I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Unappreciated? You've got a wife who would move heaven and earth for you. You've got two beautiful kids who adore you. And this is how you repay her. By lying. By cheating. You should be ashamed." Christine turned on Laura then, her rage boiling over. "You think you can just waltz in here, pretending everything's fine, acting like nothing happened." She snarled. "You think you can tear apart my family and get away with it." The confrontation was ugly, and it felt like a whirlwind of emotions crashing into one another. Laura and Eric stood there, broken, completely stripped of the facades they had been wearing for so long. But there was something powerful in that moment, something liberating. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming control, reclaiming our dignity. By the end of it, everyone was emotionally spent. Laura and Eric looked like shadows of the people they had been when they entered the room. Christine and I exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the strength we had both found in that confrontation. The fallout was swift. Laura packed her things and moved out that evening. The next day, I filed for divorce. Christine did the same. Eric lost his job after Christine sent their employer the photos and messages we had gathered. Laura's reputation took a nosedive as word of the affair spread through our friends and family. They had no one to blame but themselves. As for me, it wasn't easy. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, when getting out of bed felt like an insurmountable task. But over time, the anger began to fade. It was replaced by something quieter, something stronger. A determination to rebuild my life, to move forward. I started therapy. I took up running, and I reconnected with old friends. A year later, I found myself in a better place. I was happier than I had been in years. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I had finally learned to value myself again. I had learned to demand honesty and respect from the people I let into my life. Laura and Eric, last I heard, their relationship had crumbled under the weight of guilt. They couldn't survive what they had done. In the end, it wasn't revenge that healed me. It was reclaiming my power. And that I did. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The initial shock of the betrayal, the anger, and the aftermath started to feel like distant echoes. As much as I had thought I would never be able to move past the hurt, I began to realize something important. time, though painful, was my greatest ally. I had been so consumed by the need for revenge, by the desire to make Laura and Eric feel the weight of their actions. But I learned that the true path to healing wasn't about holding on to that anger. It was about letting go. I threw myself into therapy. At first, it felt strange, almost pointless. What could a stranger possibly tell me that I didn't already know? But slowly, I started to understand. The sessions weren't about what had happened to me, but about why I had allowed myself to be hurt for so long. Why had I ignored the signs? Why had I given my heart to someone who didn't value it? It took time, but I found forgiveness. Not for Laura, not yet, at least, but for myself. I forgave myself for the things I couldn't control, for the years spent believing in a lie. I forgave myself for staying silent for so long, for not trusting my instincts when they first told me something was wrong. And most importantly, I forgave myself for thinking that I had to be angry to heal. The anger had consumed me. But in the end, it was only peace that brought me true freedom. I started running to clear my head. At first, it was just a way to distract myself, to tire my body so my mind could finally find some rest. But eventually, running became something more. It became a metaphor for my life, one step at a time. I was moving forward. I ran through the pain, through the memories, and with every mile, I left a piece of the old me behind. I left the man who had been cheated on, who had been humiliated, who had been consumed by his desire for revenge. That man was gone, and in his place was someone stronger, someone who had learned to trust again. This time, himself. A year after the divorce, I met someone new. Her name was Emily, and she was kind in a way that was unexpected. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I didn't need to replace Laura, and I certainly didn't need someone to fill the emptiness left behind by my failed marriage. But Emily didn't try to fix me or make me forget. She accepted me for who I was in that moment. Broken, yes, but healing. Too slowly, gently, we began to build something together, something real, something based on trust, communication, and mutual respect. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when I thought about Laura, when the past crept back into my thoughts, when I wondered if I had made the right choices. But I learned that healing isn't linear. There will always be days when the scars show a little more. But that doesn't mean the wound is still fresh. It just means that I've lived through it, and I'm stronger for it. As for Laura and Eric, I never heard from them again, except for the occasional rumor that would trickle through mutual friends. They never made amends. They never faced the truth of what they had done. And as time went on, I stopped caring. I realized that the most powerful thing I could do was to let go of the need for closure from them. The closure I needed was something I had to create for myself. Christine and I stayed in touch. I couldn't have asked for a better ally during that time. We both carried the weight of our shared betrayal. And in a way, our friendship was a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected people can come into your life at the most painful times and help you heal. Christine had lost everything too, but she found a way to rebuild. She became a better version of herself, just as I had. I found a new purpose in my work, in the things that truly mattered. I no longer measured my worth by what anyone else thought of me. I knew who I was, and I knew that I deserved respect, honesty, and love. Not just from others, but from myself. I could finally look in the mirror without shame or regret. I was no longer a victim of my circumstances. I had become the architect of my own future. And so life went on. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I wasn't haunted by the betrayal anymore. I wasn't held hostage by the anger or the need for revenge. I had let go, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my power. In the end, I came to realize that sometimes life gives you the most painful lessons. But if you're strong enough to learn from them, you can emerge from the wreckage stronger and more resilient than you ever imagined. I'd had my revenge, not through petty actions or spite, but by becoming the man I was always meant to be. A man who values himself, a man who doesn't let others dictate his happiness, a man who learned to forgive, and most importantly, a man who learned to love and